Times executives, editors, and reporters have been CFR members. The Times won't expose the CFR because they both belong to the same hierarchy. A similar picture can be sketched of other major news organizations. Media diversity is an illusion.
People get caught up in debating if MSNBC has a better perspective than Fox News or ABC, NBC. These are a very narrow window of information.
Here's your news, here's the report on what's happening through the Republican lens, through the liberal lens, but they're not getting down to the roots and down to the basics and saying, here's the true fundamental problems in society and here's the true solutions.
There is this illusion in America we have a diverse media because we have so many diverse outlets. And a person might say, well, I know this story is true because I saw it on America Online, and then I turned on my television and CNN said the exact same thing. And then later in the week I got my Time magazine and it said the exact same thing. Now, you know, when a story has been confirmed by independent news outlets like that, it must be true. Well, here's the problem. Until the recent AOL spinoff, America Online, CNN, and Time magazine were all owned by one corporation, Time Warner.
At the national level, it's a surprising small number of people that control the vast majority of the national news media.
It's no surprise that you're not going to see any of this in the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is owned and controlled by 5 major corporations.
The New York Times Company owns the Boston Globe. The Washington Post Company owns Newsweek. Disney owns ABC. CBS owns Simon & Schuster. Time Warner owns AOL, CNN, Time, Warner Brothers Studios, HBO, New Line Cinema, Sports Illustrated, People, Fortune, Money, and dozens more. News Corporation owns the Wall Street Journal, Fox Television, London's The Times, Barron's, HarperCollins, Zondervan, Hulu, and the New York Post and scores of other media outlets.
When you have one corporate owner, you're going to get one viewpoint. You don't get a diverse view unless you have diverse ownership.
I got a communication from someone who's in a 3-letter network, head of a news department for that 3-letter network, and said, my family member is in Iraq now, and I was so disturbed at what you said last night about depleted uranium. I don't want to believe this is true. And I said, it is. I gave the evidence, the information, and he said, yes, I've been up all night studying it. You are right. He said, I wish I could tell the people this. And I said, and why can't you? And he said, it's not part of the political paradigm.
Most of America's major media is owned by around a dozen multinational corporations. These, in turn, have directors that interlock through membership in the CFR. Thus, the establishment can guarantee the public receives a uniform viewpoint.
The mainstream media will not cover many of these issues because of, in part, because of the people who pay to sponsor their television shows. When you have major corporations that are doing pretty disgusting things to the mainstream public, paying to have TV exist, they're not going to want the commentators discussing about the things that they are doing and how they're awful.
You're not going to see the truth in mainstream media, and in fact, you're going to see disinformation agents. You'll see people like me smeared in the media. If it comes out at all, the information that we're talking about, you're going to find that it's marginalized.
Once a year, the world's elite from government, banking, industry, and media hold an international summit called the Bilderberg Conference. The meetings are closed to the public. In 1991, speaking before the Bilderbergers, CFR Chairman David Rockefeller described the media policymaker marriage. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subject to the bright lights of publicity during these years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government which will never again know war, but only peace and prosperity.
But I don't think we're buying into it as much anymore. I think that the advent of new media I think the internet, social media, the ability for people to talk to each other, communicate, share information like at no other time in human history really renders a lot of the propaganda that we face unusable.
It's very tempting when you look at the short-term trends in the American government and the application of technology in organizations like the NSA to think that we're heading towards a totalitarian surveillance state. But technology is fundamentally empowering, and with all the technology that's on the horizon right now, we see Google Glass as an exciting innovation, but really just scratching the surface of what's about to happen with computers in our brains, if not just in our contact lenses, or better integrated with our lives in general, and the profusion of cameras in society. These are good things in and of themselves. The question is really who controls these technologies. And it is scary when government controls these technologies, but I'm very confident that technology also empowers greater awareness and is going to lead people to realize that non-coercive, voluntary, peaceful relationships are superior to violent, coercive ones that are the reasons we have to be afraid not of the technology itself, but of the application of it. So it's really important to be aware of that distinction when fighting back and making sure that we're not making people afraid of the technology itself, but that they know what is correct to be afraid of, which is the government control and usage of these technologies as mechanisms of greater control. But the technology fundamentally empowers us to better control our world, our environment, to be more empowered human beings as individuals, and that is a great thing to be celebrated, and if anything, is going to lead government to be obsolete.
We are the individual people of the United States. We need to exercise our rights. Nobody's going to come in on a white horse and rescue you or save the day. This is your job. This is an informed electorate's job. It's our job to inform our elected officials that we refuse to be a part of this plan.